So it's time for the what am I growing and what am I sowing in April video, and I did a special video really just about the growing side of things, so I'm just going to skim over that really quickly and just show you just a few screenshots of the various different things that we've got growing at the moment. If you want more details of what we're growing, as I say, look at that video, it's linked in the description, and also just look at the tour video that I've just recently done as well, because that'll show you not just the things that we're growing but also all the things that are mature and ready for harvest. So yeah, we're on to really what am I sowing in April, and it's a pretty important month for me, and I'm not going to do any more preamble. Let's just take a look. So this video is about what I'm sowing, so I won't dwell on what's growing, but we've got our main crop: tomatoes, our early tomatoes, our tomato rootstocks for grafting, just a few beetroot and lettuces. The vast majority of those are planted out now. I've got some colettes, some sprouts, some golden purslane, some beans, some celeriac, some celery, early baking potatoes, my first early peppers and chili peppers. More of those peppers. These have all been moved onto the windowsills now. My main crop peppers, running a bit behind as required because I don't have space for all of these as well. First early courgettes and more peppers. Pretty much everything else is in the ground, so most of the onions are in the ground now, and of course all the leafy greens, early kales and all of those sorts of things, early beetroot, etc. And lots of flowers now on the cucumbers. All these little cucumbers coming, loads of them all the way up, so I'm really pleased with those. And then outside in the mini greenhouse, I've got some lettuces hardening off there, some spinach hardening off there, some more spinach growing there, some lettuces. These are all the brassicas that I've just pricked out, so these are the spares that are left over, and we've got some spring onions down at the bottom. That's looking really lovely. So here's a quick look at my main crop brassicas, and I'm really pleased with the way these are growing. They're looking really nice, stocky little plants, and I'm a big fan actually when it comes to brassicas of having an early crop and a main crop and a late crop. And in fact that's kind of, I think, just a useful principle in general in gardening. Obviously everybody's used to it with potatoes, but I think it's really useful to think of everything in this way. So you do a small number of things early crop, and then you do loads of stuff main crop, and then you do a small number of things sort of late crop. Works really nicely. So I just quickly wanted to fly through the March sowings and just give you an idea of the sort of things that we've already sown. A lot of this stuff is planted now, so there's spring onions, lots of the peas are planted, all the spinaches, all the early potatoes, the courgettes. They are almost ready to go in the not the conservatory, to go in the polytunnel. They will need protecting though with a little bit of bubble wrap or something like that. My last succession of field beans, they've just started coming through. All the leeks are doing really well. Golden beetroot maybe not so well, a bit early really for golden beetroot. Celeriac's doing great, and of course all the radishes, we're harvesting those now. Turnips are really growing beautifully. The early Brussels sprouts are doing brilliantly. We're just about to start harvesting the leaves off those. All the brassicas, they're all doing okay apart from the Brussels sprouts. That packet of fill basket didn't do very well. All these little kales, they're looking beautiful, and the early kales are nearly ready for harvest now, so that's really exciting. Really pleased with the colettes and the spring onions, and the rootstocks for the early tomatoes they're doing pretty well. So I'm going to be just testing my grafting technique with these early tomatoes, these ones that are just on the screen now. And they might end up going in the polytunnel in some containers, those test ones. We'll see. All the test tomatoes are up. My main crop ones haven't been sown yet. First succession of golden purslane, which is going in hanging baskets in the polytunnel. That's about ready for pricking out, potting on. And all the early beans are up. They're going in the polytunnel next week. And yeah, just these few things that haven't got around to sowing yet. So just these alderman peas and this last batch of French breakfast radish and turnips. It's just weather's just been too nice, just been too busy out hiking to get around to that, but that's what April's for. So I'll just switch over to April and we'll take a look at that. So it's my last batch of leeks. I've got a lot of leeks. I've got summer leeks, I've got winter leeks. This is the last batch of the winter leeks, and what you'll notice in here, there's a few things where I don't have a sowing location in this database, and that's because right now I'm sowing a lot of spares just in case we get any crop failures or something goes to seed a little bit earlier than I was expecting, or we get any pest problems or anything like that. I always like to have a few of my favourite things ready to just pop in if we have problems. So that's the leeks. Colettes, that's a batch of spares. There's always plenty of people on the allotment site will take them if I don't end up needing them. I've got loads and loads of early potatoes. I've got about a 13-week supply or something like that. So I don't really need a huge amount of early potatoes. I'm just putting just a few last few Swift and Aaron Pilot in. These will all grow outside now. All my true early potatoes are either in the greenhouse, the conservatory or the polytunnel. I'm doing a batch of tatsoi. This is my main crop tomatoes now. I do my tomatoes a little bit later than most people. I did a video about why I do that, and yeah, I'll link that in the description below if you want to see my logic there. I just have so much stuff growing. I'm in no rush really to get tomatoes. Loads of spring onions. Basically I just do spring onions, radish and turnips twice a month forever, basically, up until October, November time, something like that. Beetroot, yeah, we're always doing beetroot. We eat beetroot like pretty much every day. First batch of chard. I don't do it early because I find it just goes to seed too quickly if I do that, and right now we've just got so much spinach we don't really need chard. This is my first courgettes that will actually go outside, although they will be wrapped in bubble wrap. And as I said, I've done courgettes nearly ready to go in the polytunnel now. Nice big plants. Just a few gap filling Romanesco cauliflowers and calabrese. We don't really do cauliflowers in the middle of summer. They just take up so much space, and I don't think, for me anyway, they don't grow that well. But I do lots of them for autumn and for spring. First batch of Mikado spinach. This is an Asian spinach, doesn't bolt as fast, and New Zealand spinach again doesn't bolt. Well, it doesn't bolt at all. New Zealand spinach, it just gets killed by the frost in sort of October, November time. Carrots, I do 2 batches of carrots every month, so I'm always doing carrots. The ones I'm doing, the early ones are Mercurio, and then I'll switch on to main crop carrots next month. Eskimo, and I can't remember what it is, but you'll see it next month anyway. Golden purslane, first batch that's going to go in a coal frame. I did a batch last month that'll go in the polytunnel. I absolutely love golden purslane. It's my absolute favourite salad ingredient. And then we're on to the outdoor tomatoes. I'm just doing Crimson Crush and Tumbler. To be honest, Tumbler I find is way better than Crimson Crush, but the benefit of doing the two is that Crimson Crush is a blight resistant one and Tumbler isn't. I've never really lost a batch to blight, but just in case, it's always useful to have an alternative. I do my tumblers in really big containers, like a 30-litre container, which is really big for a sort of hanging basket tomato-like tumbler. But when you do that, when you give it that much space, the yield is just phenomenal. So I get as many tomatoes off the tumblers as from the polytunnel plants, the cordon plants in the polytunnel. It's fantastic. More spinach. This is a salad spinach, this Monopa. I've got high hopes for this one actually. I haven't actually tasted it yet. It's a new one for me this year. The first batch from last month is almost ready for planting now, and it looks really nice in that picture, doesn't it? Quite small leaves, really sweet, low in oxalic acid, so quite excited to try that. Thanks to Steve from Digwell Green Fingers for that recommendation. And tatsoi, just keep on doing tatsoi. We really like it. The nice small leaves again, ideal for salad mixes. And then we're on to the Crown Prince, and this is the only winter squash that we do. We used to do a huge amount of it, but we don't have Jennie's plot now, and so we're doing a moderate amount of it. But we do like to have squash, every few weeks all the way through winter. Basically, we try and have winter squash from the store up until the point at which we get courgettes from the polytunnel. Although that didn't work out this year because we had that really bad freeze where we were down at -11 wind chill for quite a few days, and it never rose above freezing. And our squash was out in a shed. Now that shed is normally frost free, but nothing is going to be frost free unless it's heated when it's below freezing for days on end. And unfortunately we left it. We did cover it and everything, but anyway, it all rotted. Apart from, I think we only got 2. So we had about 15 squashes in there. 2 survived. Quite disappointing. So next year we're keeping our Crown Prince indoors where it's heated. Lettuces, again, these are sort of spares just to fill any gaps. But lettuce is a hugely important crop to us. Debbie and I eat a salad pretty much every day, and the kids eat salads and friends eat salads. It's a massive crop for us. First sowing of the parsnips, and I'm growing a lot more parsnips this year, even though they're kind of like a stupidly cheap crop to buy in the shops, and they take up loads of space. But yeah, the kids really love them, and Debbie likes them as well. I'm not a fan myself, but so I'm growing more, and I just keep on doing turnips and spring onions. Spring onions are perhaps one of my favourite crops. The taste of them is just so amazing by comparison with what you can get in the shops, and they're just so good for you and so easy to grow and so productive. They've just got everything going for them, and they're just such a great interplant. You can just stick them anywhere we've got a gap. Brilliant. And I particularly like these North Holland Blood Red in the summer. Leela is another alternative, really nice. Cucamelons, it's worth mentioning that I chit these, and they take forever to germinate in the soil, like literally like 3 weeks or something, and I'm always looking at them for the whole of this 3-week period thinking, have they rotted in the soil? Are they actually going to grow? If you chip them, then they germinate within about 3 days, just in a sealed container on moist kitchen roll, and you see these tiny little green leaves on them, really tiny, and that's the point at which you just pot them on. And last year I did this for the first time and just got 100% germination, and 100% of the ones that I planted, the chits that I planted, grew just fine. I was so pleased with them by comparison, and there was no worrying about are they rotted or anything like that. They did great. And on the topic of chitting, I do exactly the same thing with my sweet corn. I find it's, again, so much easier to chit them on moist kitchen roll. And they're really the only two things that I chit, but it's just so easy to do. I love it. And then I'm on to my main crop potatoes. There's a plane going over there. We live next door to 2 airports, so it's quite noisy here sometimes. Yeah, so I do Charlottes as a main crop, and Sapamira and Cara. There's 2 batches of Sapamira there just because they're going in different locations. And I'm actually doing something I've learned from Nigel from the Muddy Boots channel, and he leaves his Sapamira in the containers and harvests them late on in the season, so kind of February, March time. And it means you get nicer quality potatoes than the ones that are still in the store. Now, I'm not going to do that for all my potatoes because I use my potato containers to grow things like green garlic and stuff over winter. So I don't want to just use up all my containers by leaving potatoes in them. But for just a few of them, I think I'm doing 5 tubs. I think that's fantastic because it means just for those last few months we get these kind of higher quality potatoes. Now, we do that for our Christmas potatoes. I don't know why I call them Christmas potatoes, but for our late crop Charlottes, which I'll do in June, July time, and I leave those in the containers and I just put them in my little greenhouse, like all the containers just all stacked up. And we're still harvesting those now, and we'll be harvesting those into the first week probably of April, and then we'll switch over to our new season crops. So that's how we do the potatoes. If you're interested in potatoes, I'll put a link to my ebook below that has all the details of how I grow potatoes, and lots of other things. And then we'll do 2 batches of cucumbers. Again, these are going to go in the polytunnel. I will do some cucumbers perhaps to grow outside as well, but I won't do those until much later on, because I won't be planting those out until mid-June probably. Cucumbers, it's definitely doesn't pay to rush with cucumbers in a polytunnel or a greenhouse or something like that, because they really need nighttime temperatures above 10 degrees, and that's not going to happen for us at least until June. So yeah, definitely don't try planting those too early. We're not in a rush because we've got plenty of cucumbers growing in the conservatory, and they've all got loads of fruits on them now, so it won't be long, a couple of weeks now, until we're eating cucumbers. And then we'll the last batch of carrots. So that is pretty much everything that I've got here, and I will just show you, and I'll put a link to it in the description. But I've now got a new way that I'm doing first harvest dates, and so I'm tracking the first day that I harvest each batch of things that I sowed, and I'm only doing it for the things that I sowed this year in the main rather than things that I sowed last year. But that's quite interesting, and the interesting thing is here I'm starting to get some data on days to first harvest. So for example, these lettuce which I sowed on the 7th of November, they took 125 days till the first harvest, and these radish took 65 days from sowing to first harvest. And I think this is really interesting data, and I'm really looking forward to incorporating all of this in my ebook, because the times to first harvest are so variable depending on when you're sowing, and the seed packets give you no good indication of what those times are. So that's really exciting. And an example of this is like this lettuce here, for example, that I sowed on the 13th of January. It only took 81 days to first harvest, and so that's a heck of a lot shorter than the ones that are sowed in November. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to fully populating this and sharing all this data with everybody. And so the best place to find all that data is going to be in my ebook, and loads of plans to put loads more of this, surface loads more of this data from the database in the relevant sections of the ebook. So I think with that I shall wrap up on what I'm sowing in April. So I hope you like this quick video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.